Happening now on Grid Tonight, Connor Zilisch lost out on a major present from General Motors. Why was the young racing star blocked from the World Endurance Championship rookie test in Bahrain? Formula E unveiled its new Gen 4 car earlier today. Will it take the series to a whole new level of competition? Denny Hamlin, see the look on his face? He's feeling the case of the blues after losing another Cup Series championship last Sunday at Phoenix. Can he perform at such a high level again in 2026, or could he potentially walk away? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lamont, and we have a special guest joining us tonight, filling in for Joshua Birch, Omi from JB Motorsports. Omi, we're really happy to have you here on Grid Tonight for the very first time. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Kobe. Should be quite a lot of fun and looking forward to getting going. So with that said, let's immediately delve into our top story here today as well of the show. So according to an exclusive report from Daily Sports Car, the NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Connor Zilisch was scheduled to travel to Bahrain this weekend, and those plans have now been cancelled. After the FIA World Endurance Championship season finale, which is taking place this weekend, the 8 hours of Bahrain, it has been reported that the General Motors was planning to reward Zilisch for his historic season in the Xfinity Series. His reward was to participate in the FIA WEC rookie test, with Zilisch getting to drive the Cadillac V Series R from the Hyperclass with the Hertz team Jota. However, since he lost the Xfinity Series title, Zilisch didn't have enough points to get a license from the Automobile Competition Committee to test a prototype from the hypercar class. If Zilisch had won the championship in the Xfinity Series, he would have had 14 points necessary to test at Bahrain. Apparently, Xfinity awards 10 points per Zilisch. Instead, he will be at next weekend's IMSA sanctioned test at Daytona International Speedway, driving the Cadillac GTP with Action Express Racing. If the test goes well, Daily Sports Cars say that Zilisch could potentially earn a spot in the Cadillac GTP driver lineup for next year's Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. Zilisch told motorsport.com that there's nothing he could do to appeal this and considered it a second shot in the heart after not missing out on a championship. Photo taken by James Gilbert from Getty Images. Matt, is this a silly reason to prevent someone from testing a prototype from the hypercar class, especially an extremely talented driver like Zilisch, who has won at Daytona and Sebring in LMP2 alongside his plenty of other accomplishments as well? Evening, Matt.
Good evening to you, Omi. Hello, Kobe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show, Omi. As Kobe said, your first time with us tonight, as Josh has had to have an emergency miss on tonight's show, and Joe also chimes in with welcome, Omi. Much NASCAR stuff to discuss, isn't there? And this is kind of on the fringes of it from the weekend. We'll get to more of it later. Don't you worry, it's coming. Connor Zilisch. I mean, of all the silly things that have happened in the world, let alone world motorsport in 2025, this is right up there. As you said, LMP2 class winner at two of the prestige endurance races in the world over the last couple of years at Daytona and at Sebring in LMP2. And of course, he was in that All-Star Corvette in GTD this year with SVG and Scott McLaughlin and Ben Keating at Daytona. Which didn't quite go as planned, but he was there and he was racing. But alas, this is a shame, real shame, and really stupid that he hasn't managed to get this test under his belt. Good news, though, that he'll be at Daytona next week for the IMSA Wheels Down test, or whatever it's called nowadays, at Daytona next weekend for that, with Action Express, of course. And that is, good. I'd rather go to Florida than Bahrain. But I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it's not like they've pulled some guy from nowhere from go-karting or Formula 4 or something and said he's going to run a hypercar this week, and the FIA have gone, oh really? I'm not sure he's got quite the experience. This kid is a talent. We all know that. We've been talking about it for years. I think I built the left rear wheel on the Connor Zilisch bandwagon all those years ago when I spotted him in Trans Am and MX5. Just the silliest of silly things. And what the FIA have got to do with NASCAR, or NASCAR have got to do with the FIA, here comes Ben with his Ryan Blaney super license message, is ridiculous. But it's not like, it's not like he lost out on a championship in GT World Challenge USA or Europe, and that's what's cost him this run in a hypercar, or even the European Le Mans Series or the Asian Le Mans Series. It's a NASCAR issue here that's cost someone running in an FIA test. Not even a race weekend, it's a test, for goodness sake. So it's really disappointing. We know the guy's got talent, and the WEC's loss may be IMSA's gain, although you would have imagined he would find a way to wind up in a car at the Rolex in January anyway, with obviously his previous experiences we've touched on.
Yeah, there we go. There's Ben in the chat saying
Hi
hello
Ben.
to you as well. Yep, here we go. We've got a message coming, and he's also saying hello to me as well. Good to see you again, indeed, Ben. So yeah, looking back at the strong season that Zilisch had in the Xfinity Series, it's basically hard to believe, as Matt has just described to you, that in the history books he won't be shown as the 2025 champion. As noted in the title of Monday's night's Grid Encore show, Zilisch won 10 races, earning 20 top fives, 23 top 10s in total, and 8 pole positions, and no championship to show for it in a winner-takes-all championship for race. Zilisch and his number 88 team just didn't have the pace to keep up with Jesse Love, who went on to win the title. And adding insult to injury, Zilisch didn't get the owner's title either, as that went to the number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota as well. The Grid Live wrap-ups and encore shows were fired up over Zilisch losing the Xfinity Series Championship after having a dominant season. We may never see anything like it again. Also, it does it seem wrong to you, Matt, that a driver could perform so well and not be called a champion?
Well, we've been all over it, haven't we? These last couple of shows on the network, and there's the Cup race will be discussed later. Don't you worry. But this is, I mean, what a season! We've been talking about it all year, through the year. It didn't start off great, and then he missed the race with the back injury after the Talladega crash. Came back and started winning. Then he fell off the car at Watkins Glen and broke his collarbone. Still comes back and continues the role after that. Excuse me. And going into last weekend, I think everybody was saying, Heim's the favourite for the Truck Series, Connor is the favourite for Xfinity. There wasn't really a clear favourite, perhaps, on form going into the Cup race. Again, we'll talk about that later on. But to have the season he's had and not win the title is a shame. But as I said to somebody over the weekend, people will, but relatively speaking, no one will remember that he came second in the Xfinity Series Championship in 2025 when he's 3 or 4 Cup Series championships deep in his career, if he continues on this path in a few years' time. It is a shame that, the stats will show that he was amazing and didn't win the championship. In 2003, in the IndyCar Series, Tony Kanaan finished on the same amount of points as Scott Dixon, but he didn't win the championship because it went to count back on second places. Lewis Hamilton and/or Fernando Alonso didn't win the 2007 championship for McLaren. History could repeat itself, of course, this year, where they were pipped by Kimi Raikkonen. Felipe Massa didn't win the championship in 2008. We all know what happened there. Things happen in motorsport. You can't always have the storyline continue on the same trajectory. That's racing. It is a real shame for Connor, and of course they had Allgaier in the hunt there as well at JRM, and that didn't happen for Justin to back up his championship from last year either. So it's awful. Hello to Denver. It says bad enough Connor being kicked in the nads by NASCAR for the championship stunt. His words, not mine. Now another kick in the nads for not getting a test in the hypercar because maybe he could pull some strings close to him. Well, they've said they're not going to run him, and he'd be on his way there by now because, of course, the test is just after the race weekend, and of course that WEC race is on Saturday, so championship finale for them. So as I said, Denver in the WEC's loss may be IMSA's gain, and in the end of January when he's in the car tearing it up at the end of the race trying to win the race for Action Express, if he gets the drive in the race, then there might be some people in the WEC hierarchy going, oops, I think we've made a mistake here. But much like we're going to talk about throughout the show, them's the rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello to
Adam
Adam.
also saying hello to us as well. Well, should we, as Matt mentioned, we will come back to NASCAR, but I think it's time that we actually take a little bit of a deep breath after all of the information we've just gone through
Yes,
for
good idea.
Zilisch. Yeah, let's go to our second story of the show. Andretti Globals has re-signed Carl Kirkwood to a multi-year contract extension. Kirkwood will continue to drive the number 27 Honda beyond the 2026 NTT IndyCar Series season, and will take himself off what's expected to be an active free agent period in 2027. Since joining Andretti in 2023, he's won 5 races, 3 poles, and scored 6 podiums. 2025 was a breakout year for the 27-year-old driver, who won on the streets of Long Beach and Detroit and got his first oval win at Gateway as well. He also finished 4th in the points as well. And Kirkwood said between the team's new shop, the leadership at TWG Motorsports, teammates, and other evolving factors within the organization, he believes this team is a powerhouse, graphic courtesy of Andretti Global. Are you surprised that Kirkwood didn't test the free agent market for 2027? And do you think he can take the next step with Andretti by becoming a legitimate championship contender? Kobe's back with us, so we'll start off with you, Kobe. Thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a real interesting situation with Kyle Kirkwood. I guess I want to say yes and no, because we know 2027 IndyCar Series season is going to be insane, because many drivers within the IndyCar paddock are going to be without a contract. So it's going to be absolute chaos, just like also in NASCAR as well, with a lot of drivers being out of contract. I'm not sure what's up with 2027 silly season motorsports, but for some reason, it seems like drivers all across the board are going to be looking for new homes or potentially staying where they are, like Kyle Kirkwood is. And Kyle Kirkwood, he's been in the Andretti family for a long time now, and it just seems like it's a place where he's comfortable. And when we first got the news of the extension, I was thinking, I wonder why he's not going to wait to see if another major ride becomes available, namely the number 6 Chevrolet at Aaron McLaren. And we talked about how Nolan Siegel's going to be on the hot seat this season to perform, or Zach Brown will not hesitate to move on from him. And if you can join a lineup of like a Pat O'Ward or Christian Lundgaard, that would be really great to slide into that 3rd seat and finally get some stability there at Aaron McLaren and Team Penske. Unless David Malukas completely flops in that number 12 car next year, they won't be moving on from their drivers anytime soon, and that will leave Ganassi, whether or not Scott Dixon were to retire or they're ready to move on from Kiffin Simpson. They're not going to move on from Alex Palou. And then you start looking at all the other teams, and it's like, where is there to go? So it really seems like that was the best bet for Kyle Kirkwood to stay at Andretti. And when I was reading Marshall Pruitt's article on Racer.com, he was basically saying that Kyle Kirkwood, he's loyal because Andretti's been good to them, and he wants to be good to them in return by staying with the organization. And in regards to becoming a legitimate championship contender, looking at Kyle Kirkwood's 4 seasons in the NTT IndyCar Series so far, and in his rookie year, even though it was AJ Foyt racing in 2022, he was 24th in the standings. Not really a good year, but he was able to learn and make a lot of mistakes without being in the spotlight. And then a year later, 2023, he went to Andretti IndyCar program, and he was 11th in points. And then he continued to improve each and every year. First year with Andretti was 11th, and then second year he moved up to 7th, and then last year he was 4th in the points. So if he continues this trajectory, maybe we see him finish in the top 3 in points. And we know they're adding Will Power, which should make the organization even stronger. Marcus Ericsson's in a contract year. He's going to have to really go out there and show what he's made of to keep Dennis Hauger from taking his seat in 2027. But I think, with Colton Herta going off to Formula 2, and then, you had the veteran Will Power there, I think that Kyle Kirkwood has a real great opportunity to truly lead this organization into the future, because we know TWG Motorsports, Dan Towers' organizations, all the different racing teams that he owns all across motorsports. He wants to build contending teams that are out there contending for race wins on a weekly basis and for championships each and every year. And I think, if Andretti continues to get their IndyCar program back where they believe it should, Kyle Kirkwood, he can really, start to become one of those guys every single weekend. Like you think of like an Alex Palou, someone who can go out there, win on any type of track any given weekend. And if Team Penske bounces back, then we'll have like the Joseph Newgardens of the world in that competition. And I think that this is great that Kyle is, staying right where he's at, because grass is not always greener on the other side, as his teammate Marcus Ericsson found out.
Yeah, I agree, Kobe. I think this is perfect for Kyle to kind of stay put. As you mentioned, there's not many moving pieces really now with things that have happened at Penske, which we've well documented. I guess the next big puzzle piece in the IndyCar driver market at the big end of the pit lane, let's say, would be when Scott Dixon decides to hang it up and leaves the 9 car empty. As you mentioned, they're not going to move on from Palou anytime soon. Kiffin Simpson is well embedded now, and he's got a lot of backing behind him, so he won't be disappearing either. So that's probably the only place he would have perhaps gone to, but and may still do. You never know. But with Herta moving away, it does kind of open up the option or the sort of position for Kyle to be the team leader at Andretti, which is good. I mean, he was great this season. With a hat trick of victories, and kind of Herta's a little bit of a drop in sort of form and stature within that team has gone hand in hand with Kirkwood going the other way. So only right that they should kind of give him what he was asking for, I suppose, in terms of his contract negotiation and stuff. And you're right, it is weird that 27 is going to be crazy bonkers in all of contract land. We've seen very little movement at all in Formula One over the last couple of years. NASCAR kind of the same, but it's all going to go off this time. Like these few months that we've just had, this time next year, it's going to be, that's all you're going to be hearing from us. I feel like on this show is going to be this person's signed for here, and this person's going here, this way and that way, and such is retired, and this person's coming out of retirement to do something. It's going to be crazy silly season next autumn for 27. Good evening to Matthew Owens, who says, I think after last season you have to look at Kirkwood as one of the few guys that could take it to Palou over the season. Yeah, I agree. It's going to be between Palou, Newgarden, maybe Scotty Mack, and Kirkwood.
Yeah, Matt. And one thing that I wanted to point out about Palou, I know he's having a great run right now in the IndyCar series, but I wonder how he's going to respond next season, because we haven't talked about it on the show yet. But obviously plan to once we get a verdict. He's having the McLaren trial going on, I believe, over there with you guys in the UK right now. And I've seen some of the pictures that they've taken of Palou coming out of the courtroom. He looks like he's mentally drained. Going through this entire process. And I wonder if it's going to have any effect on his performance at the start of next season. But given that this could very well all be over before the next IndyCar season begins, since we're still many months away from the IndyCar season starting. But I do wonder if Palou could get off to a slow start because of just fatigue from dealing with all this legal stuff going on.
Yeah, I guess so. Depends how long it runs. Up to Christmas, and then maybe after in the new year of IndyCar, what's that start? Last weekend of February, isn't it, at St. Pete? So not basically once we've cleared New Year and the Rolex, which I'm guessing he's going to be a part of again.
Oh, yes, he is.
With Honda. So he'll be there for that. And then it's full steam ahead towards the IndyCar season. So I guess everybody that's involved in this trial, including Chip Ganassi, I suppose, and Alex Palou, will want that done and dusted and out the way as soon as possible, so that they can full focus on defending the championship and, of course, the 500 again next year.
Yeah, and then Denver says, don't forget about Will Power. Oh, yeah, we've been beating the drums about Will Power as well, about having a revenge season in 2026. He was the best performing Penske driver in 2025, but he was the one that got cut from the lineup, and he's moving over to Andretti after being with Penske his entire career. And Will Power is going to be out to prove something next year, and I think a fired up Will Power is a scary Will Power, and it's going to be fun to see how Will Power gets along at Andretti and see if he's going to go out guns blazing, and prove Roger Penske that you made a mistake to let go of me a year early or whenever. And then Adam says, you think Kyle Kirkwood will win multiple races in 2026, more than 3? Yeah, I think that is certainly possible. Yeah, because he's as I've said, he's been really turning on, showing improvement every single year in the IndyCar series, and yeah, I really believe he could become one of the championship favorites this year. And then one last comment, right quick, before I turn it back over to Omi to get into our next story. Matthew Owen says you also think Kyle has to be one of the favorites for the 500s in just 200 days, and we all know Mr. Owens has that countdown clock always handy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with Carl Kirkwood and Will Power and all of these drivers all trying to chase down Palou, IndyCar definitely has an exciting few years coming up. But another series that has an exciting time upcoming is the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship, as they unveiled their new Gen 4 car, which is set to debut during the 2026 to 2027 season as well. This will be the fastest car in Formula E history with 600 kilowatts or over 815 horsepower available, including an active all-wheel drive in every phase of the race. The car's construction is expected to be is expected to set a new benchmark in environmental responsibility by using 100% recyclable materials as well. With two distinct aerodynamics configurations of high downforce for qualifying and low downforce for the race, manufacturers like Porsche, Nissan, Stellantis, Jaguar, and Lola have committed to the Gen 4 era. Formula E CEO Jeff Dodds said the new Gen 4 car is more than a race car, but it represents over a decade of progress, innovation, and ambition in electric racing, graphic courtesy of Formula E. And well, Matt, we'll start off with you. What are your initial thoughts on Formula E's Gen 4 car? And did you ever think Formula E would get to this point several years ago?
Answer for the second part of that first, which is no. I thought this would have been gone a long time ago, to be honest, the way it struggled at the beginning, but fair play to everybody at Formula E all those years ago and got righted the ship, and here we are. I will come back to the first part of your question, Omi, with exactly what I said when I think it was Kobe posted the tweet in the Slack chat this afternoon when this news broke and we saw the picture. Oh dear. How long is it? How long is that car? It looks like a boat. Oh, or in probably more Formula E, a submarine. Formula One, of course, getting smaller in terms of width and length next year. We're going to have 18-wheeler Formula E races on tight street tracks where you can't really overtake in the fastest cars, which will never reach the top speed that they keep claiming that they can get to. Yeah, maybe it'll look better with some liveries on, but it doesn't. That initial shot there, yeah, I'm not a fan. They should go back to Gen 2. Gen 2 was my favourite. After when we got out of car swap mode, I thought the Gen 2 cars looked the best. What was that? 6 years ago now, maybe. But I don't. Yeah, I'm not holding out much hope for that car immediately, I have to say. And what are we, about 4 weeks away from the first race in Brazil, just before Christmas? So looks like the Batmobile, says Denver. You care? Yeah, I'm sure that people will be, and Adam's in agreement. Everyone's on the Batmobile vibe. I'm sure, if it hasn't happened already on social media, that the Batmobile, the Batman logo has appeared on the side of that car. It's time to drop the hammer in the ABB Batmobile Grand Prix, says Matthew Owens. On the streets of Gotham, it's lights out and away we go. Kobe?
Yeah, getting ready for the Gotham E-Prix. But yeah, that's an interesting looking car. Like my biggest concern, hopefully it will race well, and we'll continue to see some of the exciting moments that we've seen in Formula E over the last handful of years or so. And I think it was Ben that brought up this point. Omi, you mentioned that IndyCar has a bright future ahead. IndyCar is going to be unveiling its newest generation car. That's going to come out in the next couple of years or so. And I believe it was our own Ben Snyder who brought up the point that we're now on the 4th generation of Formula E car, and IndyCar still has not had a new generation car in the same duration that Formula E have produced 4 different styles of race cars, which, it's quite something to think about. We're literally on the 4th generation of Formula E car, and we're still stuck in the DW12 after all these years. So some food for thought there, and that's honestly a conversation for another day. But yeah, I agree with what everybody said about this car in the chat. It definitely looks like the Batmobile, And as I said, hopefully it will race well. And I am in agreement with Matt. I didn't think Formula E would get to this point after the first couple of years, but it's been really nice to see it, be recognized as one of the major championships in the world. I remember for so many years it was just the Formula E championship, and now, they got the backing of the FIA. Now you call it the FIA Formula E World Championship, and they get that World Championship recognition. It just shows you, that the series has worked hard to earn the amount of respect that it has, over the years. And I remember that very first Formula E race, it was the Beijing E Prix. I think it was Nick Heidfeld who went flipping in the air on the final lap. That was my very first memory of Formula E. I remember when they announced this concept, I was intrigued to see what it was like. I was actually watching this race live on my television in the middle of the night. And that was my very first memory of this series. And it's been really crazy to see how far it's come. I do remember the days when we ran 2 cars per race, where the driver would have to go to the garage in the middle of the race, hop out, get on a new car, and then continue racing, because the battery life, could not survive an entire E-Prix. And now these cars are becoming really sophisticated. And it's been really nice to see how they've continued to work and develop these cars, over the last decade or so. And Matt, I know you brought up the point, that they claim that this car can go this fast and all of that. And I know to us American fans, when you hear 815 horsepower, that's something that gets us really, really excited. Yeah, but I said, but they like to advertise things, and oftentimes advertisements are misleading. So so that's how that goes. But yeah, I'm glad to see where Formula E is headed. Hopefully they'll get some more manufacturers in the future and continue growing this sport. And also, they've done a great job over the years attracting some high quality driving talent. I feel like the grids, just continue to get stronger and stronger. And I know some people, feel that Formula E is just a place people go, who don't have, who either, flop out of Formula One or are not able to get to Formula One. I know they kind of said that about the IndyCar series as well, but Formula E is really becoming, a place to be. And Formula 2 driver, just talked about him, I believe last show or the week before, Pepe Marti, obviously, he's run out of time to, try to get to Formula One with no realistic spots available. He's going to be moving over to Formula E this coming season because he sees this as an opportunity to have a great racing career and continue in open wheel racing, with the doors to Formula One shut. And we also heard, that it pays very well to be a Formula E driver, so you can get a really great salary being in this series. And it's just nice to have options outside of Formula One to continue, racing in single seaters, whether it's Formula E, IndyCar, Super Formula. And I know sports car racing provides a plethora of opportunities, but I'm sure, some of these guys really love single seaters, as Mick Schumacher has said many, many times. I hear him say that in just about every single interview you ask him about it.
I was going to mention about the money, because it's all manufacturers. You do get paid fairly well, and it's become so specialist, hasn't it? And that's why people have stuck around in there, like Jev and Boemi, and of course Di Grassi have been in it, and Friends perhaps have been in it on and off, in Friends' case, from the very beginning. It's become a bit of a specialist thing. On your IndyCar point, Kobe, when Formula E started, the DW12 was 2 years old. And here we are on the 4th generation. And we're still on the DW12 in its various guises. To Denver's point, looking at racing on the bigger tracks, all these supercars that come out, they always say it can go 300 miles an hour in one spot on Earth where we've got a runway long enough for it to do that. And that's kind of the Formula E mind. It can do this. It won't, but it can. Very annoying.
Yeah, it is. And there's Adam also saying, where's Val Kilmer, Ben Affleck, or George Clooney, who are the perfect drivers for the Gen 4 Formula E car, is what Adam
Christian
says.
Bale.
Like that. Yeah, there we go. Throw in some more
Adam
options
West.
as well.
For the older generation. Don't give them ideas. We'll have Batman versus Marvel versus Avengers versus everybody in a Formula E promotional video of some description. You can be sure if that ball starts rolling down the hill.
Oh yeah, and that reminds me, Matt. Earlier this year, didn't they try to bring more eyeballs on Formula E by putting influencers in Formula E car? I think we had Mr. Beast inside of Formula E car, and then we had some others.
Sergio Aguero. That was that silly test they ran at the Miami F1 track. But just have a race, which is what they're doing. Chris Hemsworth drove one in New York City. I was there, says Ben. Well, there you go. It's already begun. on the superheroes mantra in Formula E.
Okay, well, we could chat all day about Formula E, but we're going to have to move on. And I mean, we probably should keep talking about Formula E because guess what's coming up? We're going back over to NASCAR. We avoided it for a little bit, but we're back to the NASCAR Cup Series. So if you watched the Grid live wrap up and Grid encore, you would have already seen our colleagues on the NASCAR Cup Series championship race, particularly. They weren't happy with the situation with Denny Hamlin. After coming close to winning a championship multiple times, last Sunday seemed to finally be Hamlin's day as well. All of the heartbreak he previously experienced would become a thing of the past, and finally he would get the one thing that has eluded him for all these years, until a late race caution with 3 laps to go when William Byron blew a tyre and hit the wall. This set up a period of NASCAR overtime, and before the last restart, we saw mixed strategies with some staying out and others pitting. Hamlin's number 11 team completed a 4-tyre pit stop, while Kyle Larson's number 5 team decided to gamble and take 2 tyres instead. The gamble paid off for Larson as he had the necessary track position to claim his second Cup Series championship. Despite leading 208 of 319 laps and moments away from a long-awaited title, Hamlin went home empty-handed and suffered another heartbreaking defeat. He was very emotional after the race, sitting in his car and staring into space, and at points looked like he could start crying at any moment. Hamlin told reporters after the race that his fun meter was pledged, and in that moment, he didn't want to race a car again. Flash forward 48 hours after the race, NASCAR held the end-of-year awards banquet in Scottsdale, Arizona. Once again, Hamlin made headlines after answering questions about his future. He told reporters that he's going to need some time to process this whole situation and doesn't even want to think about racing right now, despite having a contract for next year as well. Hamlin also acknowledged that he feels bad that his situation is taking away from its friend Larson's championship victory. Larson told Ryan McGree from ESPN that it doesn't feel right Hamlin could have the best car and do the best job all race long, but not leave as the Cup Series champion. During his victory speech last night, Larson gave Hamlin a shout out for holding himself a championship standard and acknowledging how hard he works. The room gave Hamlin a standing ovation with claps and cheers. The situation with Hamlin's dad has understandably made this a more emotional situation for him, as he's reportedly terminally ill, and Hamlin admitted that this was the last time his dad would be able to see him win a championship. Link to Hamlin's comments in the video are in the video description, and photo is taken by James Gilbert from Getty Images. Once he's had some time to decompress from all of the raw emotions, do you think Denny Hamlin will return in 2026, or could we see him pull a Carl Edwards and walk away, Matt?
I mean, what a situation. I mean, yeah, you have to feel for the guy, no matter if you're a fan of him or not. Matthew here, deep breath, here we go. Myself, Matthew, Seth, doing the race call, our final NASCAR race we were doing on Mixler on the USRN network. I'm sure Josh, who can't be with us tonight, and of course JT were doing the same in that last green flag run towards the end. I'm sure they were doing it on TV too. I'm sure they were doing it on MRN in those last laps when Hamlin was clearing the lead. The build to the final, here he is across the line, speech. I'm sure Lee kind of had it mentally prepared, perhaps in the back of his head on NBC. Although his call of the actual finish was not great, in my opinion. We were all ready. We were all talking about it. I'm sitting there going, we're talking about this, but the race is not finished yet. And we've seen punches throughout the day. And much like every other NASCAR race that has ever run and will ever run, there can be and will be seemingly be a late race caution. It happened on Friday, didn't it, as well, in the truck race? Although that ended up with the eventual champion being kind of who everybody wanted, unless you were a fan of the other 3. You just is he going to get, if he comes back? It depends. I think it depends on what happens with what's happening off the track, to be honest. Whether Denny is on the grid at Daytona in February, or the clash at Bowman Gray a couple of weeks before, on my birthday. because if that goes the way away from Hamlin, he really feel like the world is against him, and of course his dad's health as well. It all could become a little bit too much for him over this sort of Christmas period and stuff. So we'll have to wait and see how all of that pans out. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if that's the last time we see him in a car as a full-time competitor. Sure, he'll come back and do the All-Star race because he'll be eligible, and those kind of things perhaps pop up here and there if he was to retire, and that's a big if at the moment because we don't know. Matthew says he's not going anywhere. He absolutely loves the attention, the amount of eyes that are on him, and the articles that are written about him. And I'm sure, Matthew, because they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't recorded it, but it certainly hasn't been released at the time that we are on the show doing this live. The podcast this week will be astronomically listened to by everybody, won't it? Because they all want to hear in great detail what Denny and the guys have got to say on Actions Detrimental later this week when that finally drops. So I'll say again, I'll say this on the air now instead of in chats. I know I've got the flag behind me. I wanted Chase Briscoe to win on Sunday. He was my pick my preseason pick was Tyler Reddick to win the championship. My pre-playoff pick was William Byron, and my pre-Sunday pick was Chase Briscoe. That didn't happen. He was probably the worst of the 4 championship contenders on Sunday. And for reasons that we all know, Denny Hamlin was that. I guess technically he wasn't. Is he the closest man to win a champ? Wow, actually, I'll just thought of another one. Is he the closest man to a championship that never won it? Because I was going to mention, obviously, Brazil 2008 Felipe Massa, but of course Olivier Jacques in the 250 class of MotoGP, as it was the 250 class of MotoGP back in 2000, won the Phillip Island Grand Prix, which was the last race of the year, to beat Shinya Nakano in the race by 0.015 of a second and also win the championship. Can't get much closer than that. So it's a real shame on all the Denny fronts, and that's all been covered and will continue to be covered through the off season. We don't need to get into the here, whys, and hows of playoff formats, overtimes, points, championships, etc., etc. But on the Denny side of things, you have to feel sorry for him. Will he ever get another chance? Who knows? He's been close before, and this in NASCAR terms, this is probably the closest someone will get without winning. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again.
Yeah,
especially if they're changing the format for next season, of course, which won't be a one-race shootout. I'll drop that in before Ben types it in the comment box.
Yeah. You mentioned our call as well at JB Motorsports. I know Joshua Birch isn't here right now, but I can actually get you what he texted us immediately after we finished. Okay. I don't agree with that. It was Denny's. This feels like a little hollow of overtime and NASCAR champ rules as well. But yes, similarly to you, we weren't a fan of it at all. I don't think anyone was as well, as we have Ben in the live chat as well. There you go, Matt.
50 points taken away from Mark Martin for him on a team penalty and lost to Dale Earnhardt by 26. Well, that's still not as close as losing by 4 places in a championship row, whatever it was between Larson and Hamlin at the finish line on Sunday, because everyone was looking at those two. And don't forget, Ryan Blaney actually won the race. And if he'd not been bumped out of the way by William Byron at Martinsville last week, he'd have been the champion. How things can change, how fluid this motorsport world is.
Well, I'm sure NASCAR may come up again in our hots and nots later on in the show. Well, we do have more news coming, but that'll be in a little bit. First of all, I'm going to hand over to you, Matt, for the grid EPI update.
Let me read this comment quickly from Matthew. He says, late cautions changed results pre-2004 and pre-overtime when the yellow came out with 10 laps to go and set up a restart with 4 to go. Absolutely. It's always been a thing. Right, let's do the Endurance Performance Index update for the week then, which was a quiet-ish one because we are getting towards the end of the season. But we've had some champions crowned over the weekend, which we must tell you about. And we'll start at Motegi in Japan for the final of Super GT. And it is a Toyota sweep of the championship, out of the races, should I say, at Motegi on Sunday, because Shota Tsubai and Kenta Yamashita won the race at Motegi in the Tom's AU Supra. And that meant they are also, yet again, the GT500 Super GT champions, and they are the champions of 2025. Winning the race was enough for them to claim the championship on Sunday. In GT300, it was a win for Team Mac, with Yusuke Shiototsu and Liori Kimura getting the win there in another Toyota. The GT300 championship went a bit of a different way, and there we had that split race earlier on in the season at Fuji, and that meant that the Leon team ended up with the title over the weekend in GT300. So congratulations to them. Also, champion was crowned in the GT World Challenge Australia, which wasn't in Australia this weekend. It was in New Zealand for the first time at Hampton Downs, and Brock Feeney helps Brad Schumacher to the championship in the Kelso Electrical 888 Audi R8. They won both races over the weekend at Hampton Downs, pipping Jackson Evans and Elliott Shute, who have been the championship leaders since the very first race of the season in April at Phillip Island, which they won. They swept that weekend. They end up losing the championship after Schumacher and Feeney overturned a 25-point deficit over the weekend to sweep the weekend with the 450 points, and a time penalty in the second race for Elliott Shute for a safety car breach would have had them second, but it wouldn't have mattered in the end because that Audi, you can see on screen, won, but they dropped them to 7th, so they put them even further out from winning the championship in the Sunday race. We have no graphics to show you, unfortunately, tonight, but I can tell you that this weekend we have, as we've been talking about at the top of the show, the World Endurance Championship finale at Bahrain, 8 hours, which does carry its EPI bonus point because it's a race longer than 6 hours. Oliver Gray, of course, is the championship leader in the Grid EPI, the European Le Mans Series champion. He's not in action this weekend, but his teammate Esteban Masson is in the GT3 class driving a Lexus. So if Masson has a decent weekend in the Bahrain race on Saturday, he could be the Kyle Larson and sweep in under the radar and take the championship away from Denny Hamlin, Oliver Gray. Update on the result of that, the champions crowned, etc., and a full points rundown as we are closing rapidly in on the end of the endurance racing season for 2025, and the World Endurance Championship comes to a close this weekend in Bahrain. Time to hand over to Kobe. A lot more news this week from off the track as well as on it.
Thank you, Matt. And that's some interesting news you just reported there with the grid EPI, how someone could just swoop in and take the championship just like that. So I guess he might perform when the lights are the brightest, but I digress. Yeah. Next, moving on for some more motorsports news from around the world, with Richie Stanaway leaving the team before the end of the 2025 Repco Supercars Championship season. Premier Racing announced that Jaden Ojeda will replace him for the final 2 race weekends of the year. Ojeda will get behind the wheel of the number 62 Chevrolet at Sandown and Adelaide, getting a head start on the 2026 season, as he'll be one of the team's full-time drivers next year alongside Declan Frazier. The team believes this will give Ojeda valuable experience ahead of his first full year in the main game. For the last few years, he's been a co-driver for the endurance races, and now he'll get an opportunity to prove himself throughout the course of a season. Graphic courtesy of Premier Racing. Also got some co-driver news for the Enduros next year. We're going to see Jackson Evans, move on to Walkinshaw Andretti United after Jackson Evans lost his full-time drive this year in the Repco Supercars Championship. Ex-Formula 2 driver Enzo Fittipaldi will compete in Indy next in 2026. Fittipaldi will drive for HMD Motorsports and get on the road to Indy after spending the 2025 season in the European Le Mans Series LMP2 class while participating in an IndyCar test with Aaron McLaren and a Formula E test with Jaguar TCS Racing. From 2022 through 2024, Fittipaldi raced in F2 full-time for 3 seasons, scoring 2 race victories at Spa and Jeddah with a best finish of 7th in points in 2023. Now he hopes to follow in the footsteps of his grandfather, Emerson Fittipaldi, who is a 2-time Indianapolis 500 champion, and his older brother, Pietro Fittipaldi, who previously competed in the NTT IndyCar Series with Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. The younger Fittipaldi said racing in Europe gave him valuable experience that made him a stronger driver, and he feels like it's the perfect time for him to take this next step towards becoming an IndyCar driver. Graphic courtesy of HMD Motorsports. And we also received some additional news involving Enzo Fittipaldi. He's going to be doing a one-off in next year's Rolex 24 at Daytona with Pratt Miller Motorsports. The number 73 LMP2 team, Fittipaldi, will join Pratt Miller's endurance driver Manuel Espirito Santo and full season drivers Chris Cummins and his older brother Pietro Fittipaldi. So two Fittipaldis will share an LMP2 car at Daytona. And after this weekend's FIA World Endurance Championship season finale, the 8 Hours of Bahrain, Mathieu Jaminet will no longer be a Porsche factory driver. The final race of Porsche Penske Motorsports, his factory hypercar program, will also be his last race, driving a Porsche and in a successful partnership. In 2016, he won the Porsche Carrera Cup France Championship and the ADAC GT Masters title in 2018. He found most of his Porsche success in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, though. In 2022, he won the GTD Pro title with FAF Motorsports, and just last month he wrapped up the GTP Championship alongside co-driver Matt Campbell at Porsche Penske. Jaminet also scored Crown Jewel GT class victories in the Rolex 24 at Daytona, Mobil 112 Hours of Sebring, and Motul Petit Le Mans. In a statement, Jaminet said he's decided to start a new chapter in his racing career, calling it one of the hardest decisions of his life. However, he felt it was time to move on. He thanked Porsche for taking a chance on him 10 years ago when they didn't have to, because he brought no sponsorship or money to the equation. All Porsche saw was his talent, so they gave him his big break to become a star in motorsports. Photo courtesy of Jaminet. NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Parker Retzlaff announced he's leaving Alpha Prime Racing. Retzlaff only spent a single season with Alpha Prime and finished 22nd in points. As you can see on your screen, he thanked the organization's co-owners Tommy Joe Mars and Cesar Baccarella for the opportunity, and noted one of his highlights with the team, a career best second place finish at Rockingham Speedway, among other good runs. His 2026 plans will be announced at a later date. Graphic courtesy of Retzlaff. Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports announced its 2026 GTD Pro driver lineup in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, starting with the number 3 Corvette. The defending GTD Pro champions Antonio Garcia and Alexander Sims will return for the full season, with Marvin Kerhofer joining them for the Michelin Endurance Cup races. However, there won't be any changes with the number 4 Corvette, as Tommy Miller and Nicky Katzberg are back as full-time drivers, and despite committing to Formula 2 next season, Nico Veroni will also return to his role as an endurance driver for Corvette with the number 4 team. Garcia said both driver lineups give the team everything they need, and thinks that the Corvette Z06 GT3R is only getting better going into its third year. Graphic courtesy of Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports. Meyer Shank Racing confirmed its 2026 IMSA Acura GTP driver lineup. The full season drivers will remain the same, with Tom Blomqvist and Colin Brown sharing the number 60 Acura, and Ringer Van der Zandt and Nick Yellowly in the number 93 Acura. To complete the number 60 Acura lineup, 6-time NTT IndyCar Series champion Scott Dixon will join for the Michelin Endurance Cup races at Daytona, Sebring, and Petit Le Mans. NASCAR driver and longtime friend of team co-owner Michael Shank, AJ Allmendinger, will do a one-off in the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Meanwhile, 4-time IndyCar champion Alex Palou will join Van der Zandt and Yellowly in the number 93 Acura for Daytona, Sebring, and Road Atlanta. Kaku Ota, the Super Formula star in Japan, is also going to return to the team for the Rolex 24 at Daytona and Salem's 6 Hours of the Glen. Graphic courtesy of Meyer Shank Racing. And now, similar to last week, a few quick news stories to close out this segment. Dick Johnson Racing's Shell V Power Team is parting ways with Will Davison, the driver of the number 17 Ford, at the end of the 2025 Repco Supercars Championship season. And in a statement, Will Davison said, "I've had two great stints with this team, and I'm incredibly proud of what we achieved together. It's the right time for both of us to move forward to achieve 600 starts at Sandown, a track that means so much to my family is special. I'll be giving it everything across these final 2 rounds." And then the team owner, Dick Johnson, said that Will Davis has been like family to us, and that won't change. He's a champion and a true professional. These last 2 rounds, we'll be doing everything we can to send him off with the results he deserves. He said that's what you do for blokes like Will. And as a result of Will Davison's departure, DJR, they ended up signing a young driver, Dunlop Super 2 Series Championship leader, Rylan Gray, to replace him as Brody Kostecki's teammate. And in a statement, Rylan Gray said that this is my dream opportunity. Brody's one of the best in the business, and having him as my teammate will fast-track my development. I'm under no illusions about how tough my rookie year will be, but I'm ready to work hard and learn from everyone at the Shell V Power Racing team. And he's so thankful to the Doc, Dick, and Jilly Johnson and the Ralph family for this opportunity. And and also Rylan Gray, he could, as I say, he's leading the championship, could very well be this year's Super 2 champion as he's racing for Tickford Race. Unfortunately, he could not stay in the Tickford family as they're set for the next several years with Cam Waters and Thomas Randall signing contract extensions earlier this season. Graphic courtesy of Dick Johnson Racing. And after losing its IMSA GTP program with BMW, Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing will stay in IMSA in 2026 and returns to its roots in GT Racing. RLL will run in GTD Pro with McLaren, as the team will be called RLL Team McLaren, campaigning the number 59 McLaren GT3 Evo. Team co-owner Bobby Rahal said, as someone who has always valued the rich history of motorsport, partnering with a brand as iconic as McLaren is truly exciting. The Rahal legacy began with my father Mike's passion for sports car racing, and to now launch this new chapter with such a storied partner is something we take tremendous pride in. Graphic courtesy of McLaren. And last but not least, got this right before the show, an hour before, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and Hall of Famer Jimmie Johnson. He's going to be back in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's going to run his hometown race next year in San Diego at the Naval Base Coronado. Johnson's going to be driving a third car for Legacy Motor Club, the number 84 Toyota, which is going to be sponsored by his longtime partner, Carvana. And in a statement, Jimmie said that growing up just miles from San Diego, he dreamed of racing a NASCAR vehicle someday in his hometown, but he never thought it was possible. He said he just came to the realization that there would be no way NASCAR could race in that city, as there was nowhere to put a track. And he said it's just mind-blowing to him that NASCAR made this reality to come back home to compete in front of his community, the military, his family and friends, and to do it with Carvana and the team he owns, Legacy Motor Club. He believes this is one of those full circle experiences that he'll never forget. A lifelong dream for Jimmie, who grew up 15 to 20 miles away in El Cajon, California. So he's going to get a true home race as he returns to the San Diego area next year as NASCAR moves to the San Diego street course. Graphic courtesy of Legacy Motor Club. And that's all the headlines I have for you tonight. So I'm going to turn it to Matt for everyone's favorite game. Pick a winner. Running out of time this year if you want to catch Matthew Bro, who seems to have one hand on the championship.
Yes, but we said that on Sunday, didn't we? Yes, but there is no overtime in pick a winner. Otherwise, we'll have to start picking races from the remaining races in the EPI. There is the table, the top four, the championship four of pick a winner are myself, Kobe, Matt B, and Tanner, who is right on the edge of perhaps being knocked out. There's only 16 points left to play for, and a good chunk of them are this weekend. And we're going to pick or put our potential picks in now for 3 of them. And we will start with the penultimate round this weekend of the World Rally Championship for 2025. They are in Japan. It starts tomorrow. Trying to remember where we are in terms of time scale and time placings and places in the world. For Rally Japan, so you need to get your pick in quickly for WRC Japan using the hashtag #PickAWinner across all of the Grid Network TV social media channels. Elvin Evans has a chance to take the championship for the very first time this weekend. His teammate Sebastian Ogier is trying to stop him. I'm going to wave the UK flag, and I'm going to pick Elvin Evans to win the event and take the championship this weekend on Toyota's home ground in Japan. Kobe, who are you going with?
I think I'm gonna go with the rally racer that I typically go with for these events. I really hate I didn't pick him last time because I would have gotten me a point, but I'm gonna go with Sebastian Ogier to get the job done.
So get your pick in for that fairly quickly if you would like to, because it is you need to get your pick in before the first stage of the event. On track this weekend rather than on public roads, we have MotoGP. They are back in Europe for 2 more races to end the season, and this weekend they are in Portugal at Portimao in the Algarve. And of course, there is a sprint race to pick from, and of course, there is no Marc Marquez, so it is fairly open. I'm going to go with Pedro Acosta to win the sprint race on Saturday, because that KTM is fairly decently fast in a straight line, and there is that whacking long straight at Portimao. So my pick is Pedro Acosta for Saturday. Of course, if you do get a pick in and you want to change it, you can do before the event begins. But my potential pick for Saturday is going to be Pedro Acosta. Kobe?
I promise I'm not copying you. I know I said this a lot on this show, but I also had Pedro Acosta in mind for the sprint race. But you said subject to change if qualifying does not go well for him, may consider switching over to another rider to see who gets the job done. Want to give pick a winner shot on me?
Well, I'm not on the board, so any form of playoff system or anything under that description would actually be helpful in this scenario. I'm gonna go with Pecco Bagnaia for the sprint race. I'm gonna try and bag in my first points right at the end of the year. So yeah, I'm gonna go for him for the sprint win.
The biggest question of all MotoGP weekends is what Pecco Bagnaia will we have over the weekend? Which one will turn up this weekend? We will find out. Also, of course, this weekend it is the Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos. Been brilliant the last few years at Brazil, of course, and we have a sprint as well this weekend on Saturday, which is at I think 2:00 in the UK. 2:00 UK time, which is excellent. Very well timed, just before MotoGP. My pick, because he won the Grand Prix by a long way last year after coming all the way through the field, is Max Verstappen. He is going to win the sprint. He may not win the Grand Prix, but I feel like he's probably going to keep chipping away at the points and win the sprint on Saturday. Kobe, who you got?
Yeah, I can't go wrong with Max Verstappen here in Brazil. And like I said a few weeks ago, it may seem crazy this late in the season, but I would not put it past Max Verstappen to find a way to win this championship and break McLaren's hearts at the end of the season. I guess in similar way that Denny Hamlin's heart was broken this past Sunday in Phoenix. But yeah, Max Verstappen, I think him and that Red Bull team can eke out every last bit of that F1 car they have for this year and try to give him the best chance to try to play spoiler this late in the championship battle. So I think Verstappen and Red Bull will take the sprint race. Who you have on me?
I'm gonna have to agree with Max because from what I'm hearing, there's a high chance of rain for the sprint and also the qualifying. So if we have the Brazil circuit along with the rain, I think we know that Max is probably going to do Verstappen things. So yeah, I'm going to go for him to take the sprint race. But I also have a feeling that the sprint may get cancelled this weekend due to the rain as well. I guess that's an extra prediction thrown in there for everybody. I just have that feeling.
Yeah, maybe they'll throw it to Sunday if they can't run it Saturday. And of course, who will forget, what was it, 5 red flags in the qualifying session? That was last year, wasn't it, in Brazil, with the qualifying session that never wanted to finish. So 16 points still available in the year for pick a winner, 5 of them up for grabs this weekend, with 2 for MotoGP, 2 for Formula 1, and 1 for WRC. Get your picks in using the hashtag pick a winner. You can get yourself fairly decently mid-table if you're not on the board already, starting from now to the end of the season. And of course, we will have a points reset before we start all over again in 2026. But it's still up for grabs between those 4 guys there on the table with the green numbers: Matt B, Kobe, myself, and Tanner. We finished the show as we approach 1 hour on the clock, as we always do, with Omi stepping into the breach instead of Josh this week for Hots and Knots. My friend, the floor is yours. What have you got from the weekend?
Well, I guess I'll go with a hot first. I'm going to go actually for Formula E and the women's test that we had on Friday last week. And specifically, I want to go for Chloe Chambers. Absolutely flying across those tests. She was very quick, very rapid. Great to see her out there and pushing on ahead of the rest of the field. We had drivers like Abby pulling in there as well. We had Alice Powell returning. So there was a good selection of drivers. Juju Noda as well. Lots of Japanese fans, I'm sure, would have loved to see her there. But yeah, Chloe Chambers was very, very impressive. And it was great to see what she could manage. Now, of course, she can't contend for the F1 Academy title due to a few poor results, including the main race that she had to miss in the Netherlands as well on the Sunday after she stalled or heading into the formation lap. So she can't contend for that. But she is definitely opening some good opportunities, I think, as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if any Formula E teams look at that and just snap her up. Definitely for the development side of things. But yeah, Chloe Chambers is looking for a seat for next year. She just wants to be in a race car. That's what she said. So yeah, I think she can definitely be one of my hots for this weekend. Great job by her.
I think it's about time that we had a full-time female driver in Formula E. I think
Yeah.
we're there. I think we're ready for it now. Someone like Abby Pulling or Chloe
Yeah.
Chambers or someone of that speed, because it would be something cool for Formula E to have a female racer in there somewhere with a decent team. That would be a cool thing. I have a hot, which might also be a not, depending on which side of the fence you're on.
There we go.
Pertains to the championship on the wall behind me. It's over. It's finished. It's finally done. We can stop talking about it now, because the discourse has been all over the place for 12 months. Thanks, Joey Logano. And I'm just done. I'm not even on the same continent / country that the championship race is in, and I'm done. I'm finished with NASCAR. Can we let's just take a break for a couple of weeks? You can all fire back up again when the playoff format's finally announced and no one likes it, whatever it may be for next year. And then we can have Christmas, and then we can go, oh, yes, Bowman Gray, the Clash. Oh, great, Daytona 500. Here we go again. We're off. And then we can, please, can we just talk about something else? Thank you. Well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Matthew Owens says late cautions change results. Oh, we've had that comment already, actually, but late cautions change results pre-2004 and pre-overtime. When the yellow came out with 10 to go and set up a restart with 4 to go, as I said earlier, it's always going to happen. At least we don't have an overtime line anymore. Also, this is just as much, if not more, of an indictment of an overtime as it is the playoff system. Both of them just make a top 2 prize in the sport feel like a little more than a lottery. Yeah, I said in the chat over the last few days, it's overtime is not being talked about enough as a problem here. Overtime seemed too short for a short track racing in the Cup Series. There's Denver. You can't have it where one track and not the other, I suppose. Big difference between 10 and 3 to go to go through. Overtime was designed to give a chance for battles to play out. If someone's 3 seconds with less than 3 to go, that battle's already decided. Yes, and races should go to the scheduled distance and no further. Adam says, wishing Will Davison the best going forward. Impressive driver down under. Adam, you can be sure that he's going to be a co-driver. He'll be we've heard the Jackson Evans news today that he's been signed up by WAU. Will Davidson will be now the top co-driver on the market. He's going with Ogier and he's going with Pecco Bagnaia in his pick of winners for the weekend, and Max Verstappen for the sprint, which is basically what we said relatively between the three of us on the show. I think unless you have any knots that you're holding back over me, I think I'm done. I don't think I've got much else to give.
Yeah. In terms of hots, of course, I'd like to also say your USRN coverage has been absolutely brilliant of the NASCAR. JT recorded the 15-minute pre-recorded thing you guys played as well. Apparently it was very emotional. So we got to listen to it. Myself and JB got to listen to it once we were done on our own broadcast. And yes, very emotional. We were having to hold back tears at that moment. So great job. And as JB has mentioned, we're looking forward next year to you guys being on YouTube and us battling away with the ratings. So you can get a higher one for the NASCAR series.
Yeah, I did mention that on Sunday, either before that video, that montage was played or after. But yeah, our program host, main commentator, and main producer Matthew Owens, who managed to get that video put together, uploaded, and put in the show just after the race finished. Chapeau to you, my friend, as I said to you the other day. Yes, it's going to be the battle of the acronyms on NASCAR next year on YouTube. JBM versus USN, as we drop the R. My hot, says Matthew, is the weekend at Phoenix. It was a great championship weekend with absolutely zero things to be upset about. Okay, sure. And that's his words, and he's sticking to it. Any more, or are we done?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll give you a future not. I'm not looking forward to my sleep schedule. We've got Macau coming up, and we've got Las Vegas as well. So on JB Motorsports, I'm not looking forward to my sleep schedule as well. F1 Academy has some very I think we've got 2 starting at 2 a.m. here in the UK. We've got 1 at 12,
at Vegas.
And then I think we've got 1 at like 5 or 6 a.m. So there's nothing at an appropriate time here in the UK. So the all-night is going to be fun. Yes, it will be the season finale for
Yeah, that's
F1
what I thought.
Academy. Pan
Which is,
versus Berg for the title.
which is next weekend, isn't it? So straight from Brazil to the Strip for the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
I think that's it in terms of hots and knots.
Yeah, I'm done.
A bit more of a quiet weekend, I guess.
Yeah, well, kind of. Yes, it was really
Yes.
only NASCAR, wasn't it? Generally over the weekend, and it goes crazy again this weekend with WEC, WRC, MotoGP, and Formula One.
Yeah, there we go. I'm sure. Hopefully, JB next week will have plenty to give as well. So looking forward to hearing what he has to say when it comes to it.
Yeah. And with that said, I believe we'll close out the show tonight and taking a look at our upcoming schedule. Sunday, Grid Live wrap up 90 minutes after Formula One Sao Paulo Grand Prix at Interlagos. And then Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the final ever show of Grid Encore with co-hosts Ben Snyder and Brandon Crossland. Don't miss the last Motor Monday and tune in to thank Ben and Brandon one final time for covering Xfinity, trucks, ARCA, Indy Next, Formula 2, Formula 3, and so much more for the for the last few years. I really appreciate what Ben and Brandon have done here on Monday nights at Grid Network. Will never be the same, and stay tuned for future updates for our Monday night programming for the 2026 motorsports season. And please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for helping us reach the milestone of 1,700 subscribers. Now we're inching closer to our next milestone of 2,000 subscribers. Hit the bell icon to get notifications so you'll always know when to go on the air, and follow our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. And we want you to take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. Joanne, Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin, David, Matthew, and our newest Patreon supporter, Crystal, who all invest each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join these fine folks who keep us on the air. And once we hit $500 per month, we can afford to send our team to the track more often and continue growing our media outlet. Link in the video description below. And got Ben right there in the chat, acknowledging what I said about the Encore show. Yeah, Ben, really going to miss you here at Grid Network, but we know you'll never be a stranger. I'm sure if there's a subject on this show that we talk about in the future that you feel very passionate about, you'll probably ping me and be like, can I be on? So so things will be a little different now, but you'll always be a friend of the show. And I'm pretty sure, 99.99% sure, that next week will not be your last appearance on one of our programs here at the Grid Network. And if you want to make a one-time donation, click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board, and invest as much as you want, and consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you here on the air. For Omi from JB Motorsports, thank you for filling in for Joshua Birch and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. I'm Kobe Lambert. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.